The Galactic Council chambers had never seen such silence. Representatives from 47 species sat in their crystalline pods, their various forms of breathing creating a symphony of worry that echoed through the vast dome. At the center of it all stood Ambassador Marcus Chun, his simple black suit looking almost primitive compared to the elaborate biomechanical forms around him. "The Human Requests audience," announced Zephyrian Prime Speaker Veltar, her 6 arms gesturing in what Marcus had learned meant deep concern. "Though we must admit, we are puzzled by your presence here." Marcus smiled, the expression causing several alien representatives to shift uncomfortably. Humans were still new to galactic politics, having only achieved faster-than-light travel 3 years ago. Most species took centuries to develop such technology. The fact that humans had done it in mere decades after their first radio transmission had set the entire galaxy talking. "I come bearing a simple message," Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. "Earth formally requests to join the Galactic Peace Accord." A sound like breaking glass filled the chamber. The crystalline hegemony representative was laughing, or what passed for laughter among silicon-based life forms. "Peace," the being chimed. "Your species has been at war with itself for your entire recorded history. You have weapons that could destroy your own world multiple times over." Marcus nodded calmly. "That's exactly why we want peace." The Void Swimmer's representative, a creature that existed partially in normal space and partially in dark matter, materialized more fully. "Your military broadcasts leak into our sensors, human. We see your war games, your weapon tests. Even now, your species builds machines designed for nothing but killing. And yet," Marcus said, pulling out a simple data pad, "our crime rates have dropped 90% since we learned we weren't alone. Our wars have stopped. Every human government has united under a single banner for the first time in our history." He looked around the chamber. "We want to join you because we've seen what unity can accomplish." The Hive Queen of the ZZ Cree Collective spoke through a 1,000-strong chorus of voices. "Unity born from fear is not true peace, human. What happens when that fear fades? What happens when your species grows comfortable with galactic civilization?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight that seemed to press against the very walls of the chamber. "With respect, Your Majesty, you assume our desire for peace comes from fear of you." He gestured to the assembled aliens. "It doesn't." The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. Senator Crixtal of the Martial Brotherhood, a species known for their warrior culture, leaned forward in his pod. "Explain yourself, human." "We've studied your histories," Marcus said simply. "All of them. The Great War of the Triple Suns that lasted 800 years. The Purge of the Crystal Nebula, where entire worlds were turned to glass. The endless hunger that consumed 47 solar systems before the machine gods could be stopped." He paused, looking directly at each representative. "We've seen what happens when advanced civilizations go to war." The chamber fell silent again, but this time it was different. This wasn't the silence of confusion or curiosity. This was the silence of recognition. "We don't want peace because we're afraid of you," Marcus continued. "We want peace because we're afraid of ourselves. Because we know what we are, and we know what we're capable of becoming." The Ethereal Collective's representative, a being of pure energy barely contained within a force field, pulsed with colors of the translation system interpreted as deep unease. "Your species is young, human. You speak of things you cannot possibly understand." Marcus smiled again, and this time several representatives actually recoiled. It wasn't a cruel smile or a threatening one. It was sad, infinitely sad. 3 years ago, when your scout ships first made contact with us, do you know what our immediate response was? Marcus asked. Within 6 hours, every major power on Earth had activated their most advanced military programs. Within 12 hours, we had theoretical weapons capable of destroying not just your scout ships, but the planets they came from. The silence stretched on. Within 24 hours, Marcus continued, we had plans for hunting down and exterminating every single one of your species. He looked around the chamber one more time. Not because you had threatened us, not because you had shown any hostile intent, but because you existed and we hadn't known about you before. He set his datapad on the speaking platform. We stopped those programs. We chose peace instead. But the fact that our first instinct was to plan your complete annihilation. Marcus shook his head. That's why we want to join the peace accord. Because we recognize what we are, and we want to be something better. The chamber remained silent for a very long time. The private chambers of the Galactic Council's inner circle buzzed with activity that would have been invisible to human senses. Quantum encrypted communications flowed between species that communicated through electromagnetic fields, biochemical releases, and dimensional vibrations. For the first time in 3,000 years, the most powerful beings in the galaxy were genuinely afraid. The humans spoke truth, admitted Archon Thelnara of the Precursor Remnants, her form shifting through several dimensional phases as anxiety took hold. Our deep space monitoring stations confirm their military preparations during first contact, the theoretical weapons they described. She paused, her timeless features showing something approaching terror. They could have worked. High Admiral Gorthak of the Star Destroyer Fleet, a being whose species had conquered 12 galaxies before joining the peace accord, crushed the arm of his command chair with one massive claw. In 27 hours, they theorized planet crackers. It took my people 4 centuries to develop such weapons. That's not the disturbing part, whispered the voice of the Eternal Machine, its mechanical tones carrying harmonics of dread. Our analysis of their broadcast signals shows they've been simulating galactic warfare since before they achieved spaceflight. Not defending against invasion. Galactic conquest. The assembled beings fell silent as this information settled in. Each of them represented civilizations that had taken millennia to reach their current level of development. The ethereal collective had spent 10,000 years learning to manipulate pure energy. The machine gods had evolved over 8,000 years from simple artificial intelligences. Even the youngest species in the council, the void swimmers, had taken 2,000 years to develop their dimension phasing technology. Humans had gone from horse-drawn carriages to faster-than-light travel in less than 2 centuries. There's more, continued the voice of the Eternal Machine. Our quantum archaeologists have been analyzing Earth's electromagnetic signatures from the past century. The progression is unprecedented. A holographic display materialized in the center of a chamber, showing a timeline of human technological development. The assembled beings watched in growing horror as the rate of advancement accelerated exponentially. Chemical weapons, biological weapons, nuclear weapons, all developed within a 50-year span, the machine noted. And then they stopped. Stopped? Asked Senator Prime of the Commerce Guild. They developed weapons capable of ending all life on their planet, the machine explained. And then they chose not to use them. Mutually assured destruction, they called it. The guarantee that any use of ultimate weapons would result in everyone's death. The machine's voice carried something that sounded almost like admiration. They held ultimate power and chose restraint. Zephyrian Prime Speaker Veltar's 6 arms moved in patterns of deep contemplation. The psychological profiles we've developed suggest this is unusual for their species. Unusual is an understatement, grumbled Gorthak. Most species develop wisdom before they develop world-ending weapons. Humans developed the weapons first, then chose wisdom. The Hive Queen's chorus of voices created a harmony of unease. Our behavioral analysis indicates that humans are naturally aggressive, territorial, and tribal. By all psychological models, they should have destroyed themselves long before achieving spaceflight. And yet they didn't, observed the ethereal collective's representative. The question is why? I believe I can answer that, said a new voice. All eyes turned to Keeper Zarthal of the Archive of All Things, an ancient being whose species served as the galaxy's historians and record keepers. I have been studying human cultural transmissions for the past 3 years. Their literature, their entertainment, their philosophical works. The Keeper manifested a complex hologram showing thousands of human stories, movies, books, and games. Observe their fictional narratives. In 97% of their stories involving galactic civilizations, humans are portrayed as the aggressors, the conquerors, the species that burns worlds for resources and enslaves others for pleasure. The chamber grew very quiet. They know what they are, the keeper continued. They have always known. Their entire cultural development has been a conscious effort to become something other than what their nature dictates. But nature will assert itself, warned the voice of the eternal machine. Our predictive model suggests that human aggression is merely dormant, not eliminated. Indeed, agreed the keeper. And that brings us to the truly terrifying part. The hologram shifted, showing human military development over the past 3 years since first contact. Since learning of our existence, they have not slowed their weapons development. They have accelerated it. New images appeared, showing massive construction projects on the edges of human space. Shipyards building vessels that dwarfed anything in the current galactic fleet. Defensive installations that could theoretically withstand assault from entire battle groups. They're building this while requesting to join the peace accord, noted Thelnara. Because they mean it, the keeper said. They genuinely want peace. But they're also preparing for the possibility that we might say no. The ancient historians' form darkened. Or more concerning, they're preparing for what might happen if their own nature eventually overcomes their desire for peace. Gordhack's voice carried the weight of someone who had seen galaxies burn. Are you saying they're building weapons to use against themselves? I'm saying they're building weapons to use against whoever they might become, the keeper replied. They call it preparation for the worst-case scenario. But our analysis suggests that in their minds, the worst-case scenario is an invasion by hostile aliens. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The worst-case scenario, the keeper continued, is humans becoming what humans naturally are. And they're preparing to fight that war if they have to. High Admiral Gordhack, veteran of 1,000 battles, spoke in barely a whisper. They're not just asking to join the peace accord for our sake. They're asking us to help them hold the leash on the most dangerous species the galaxy has ever seen. Themselves, confirmed the keeper. For the first time in the recorded history of the Galactic Council, the Inner Circle had no idea what to do. The notification arrived at 0347 Galactic Standard Time, transmitted simultaneously to every monitoring station, defense grid, and early warning system in the galaxy. The message was simple, clinical, and absolutely terrifying. Unknown fleet detected entering Sector 7 Alpha. Configuration unknown. Technology level unknown. Intent unknown. Within minutes, every species with faster-than-light capability was tracking the newcomers. The fleet consisted of 12 massive vessels, each one larger than a small moon. Their technology didn't match anything in the galactic databases. More concerning, their energy signatures suggested weapons that could crack planets. The Devourers had returned. Ambassador Marcus Chun was in his quarters aboard the diplomatic station when the alarms began. He'd been expecting this call for 3 months, ever since the deep space sensors had detected gravitational anomalies beyond the galactic rim. He was dressed and moving before the comm system finished its first chime. Chun here. Ambassador, this is Fleet Admiral Karath of the Joint Defense Force. The Zithran officer's translator carried undertones of barely controlled panic. We have a situation. The Devourers have returned. Marcus was already walking toward the command center. How long before they reach inhabited systems? 72 hours to the outer colonies. Maybe less. Korat Pauset. Ambassador, they're heading directly for the Sanctuary Worlds. Marcus stopped walking. The Sanctuary Worlds were where the galaxy kept its children, its civilians, the species too peaceful to defend themselves. They housed over 40 billion non-combatant beings from hundreds of different civilizations. What does the Council want from Earth? Marcus asked, already knowing the answer. The vote was unanimous, Karath said quietly. Even the species that opposed your membership. They want to know if humanity will honor the peace accord's mutual defense clauses. Marcus resumed walking, but faster now. And if we refuse, then the galaxy burns, and everyone knows that humans could have stopped it, but chose not to. The command center was chaos when Marcus arrived. Representatives from dozens of species were coordinating the largest military mobilization in galactic history. Ships were converging from across the galaxy, but everyone knew it wouldn't be enough. The last time the Devourers had attacked, it had taken the combined might of every military civilization and 300 years of warfare to drive them back. That was when the galaxy had twice as many inhabited worlds and 3 times the population. Ambassador Chun called out Prime Speaker Veltar, her 6 arms moving in patterns of desperate hope. What is Earth's response? Marcus looked around the command center, seeing fear in the eyes and sensor organs of beings from across the galaxy. These were species that had learned to live in peace, who had spent millennia moving beyond their violent pasts. They were asking humanity to become the thing they had all tried to leave behind. Earth's response, Marcus said clearly, is that we honor our commitments. The relief in the chamber was palpable, but Marcus wasn't finished. However, he continued, you need to understand what you're asking for. He activated his personal communicator. Admiral Park, you're authorized to activate Protocol 7. Every being in the command center turned to look at him. Protocol 7 wasn't in any of the databases they had access to. Sir, Admiral Park's voice came through the comm with crystal clarity. Protocol 7 activation confirmed. The fleet is moving to intercept. Estimated arrival at Sanctuary Worlds in 48 hours. What fleet? Demanded Admiral Karath. Our sensors show no human military vessels in this sector. Marcus looked directly at the Zithran officer. Admiral, how many ships does the Joint Defense Force have available for this operation? Approximately 4,000 vessels from 37 species, Karath replied. It's the largest fleet ever assembled. Admiral Park, Marcus said into his comm, what's our current deployment? 7th Fleet consists of 400 vessels, sir. 8th Fleet has 600. 9th through 15th Fleets are 400 each. The Home Guard maintains another 2,000 vessels in reserve. The mathematics hit the assembled aliens like a physical blow. Humanity had been part of galactic civilization for 3 years. In that time, they had built a military force that outnumbered the combined fleets of species that had been spacefaring for millennia. Where? Whispered the Ethereal Collective's representative. Where did you hide them? We didn't hide anything, Marcus replied. You just never asked to see our entire fleet. You asked to see our diplomatic escort ships. He gestured to the tactical display. The rest have been positioned along the galactic rim for the past 2 years. High Admiral Gorthak materialized in the command center via quantum projection. You've been expecting this attack. We've been expecting every attack, Marcus said simply. Human military doctrine assumes that everyone is a potential enemy until proven otherwise, including ourselves. New icons began appearing on the tactical display as human ships decloaked throughout the galaxy. The numbers kept climbing. 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 vessels. Impossible, breathed the voice of the Eternal Machine. The resources required, the construction time. 3 years, Marcus said. We've been building for 3 years, using construction techniques designed for speed over efficiency. Every human colony ship that left Earth carried automated manufacturing systems. Every asteroid belt in human space has been converted into shipyards. The display showed the true scope of human expansion. While they had publicly colonized 12 systems, the network of hidden construction facilities and supply depots spanned nearly 100 star systems. But why? Asked the Hive Queen through a chorus. Why build such a massive military while requesting peace? Marcus was quiet for a long moment before answering. Because peace is only possible when war becomes too costly to contemplate. The galaxy learned that lesson once before when the Devourers first attacked. You forgot it in the millennia since. Admiral Park's voice came through the comm again. Sir, advanced scouts report the Devourers have seen our fleet. They're changing course. Every being in the command center held their breath. They're running, Park continued, his voice carrying a note of surprise. The entire Devourer fleet is retreating toward the galactic rim. Marcus nodded slowly. Signal all fleets to maintain pursuit course, but do not engage unless fired upon. Send a message to the Devourer command ship on all frequencies. What message, sir? Marcus looked around the command center one more time, seeing the dawning realization in the eyes of the galactic representatives. Tell them that humanity remembers the last time someone tried to destroy what we've chosen to protect. Ask them if they really want to find out what we've learned since then. The silence in the command center was absolute. For the first time, the galaxy understood what they had invited to join their civilization. And what had been protecting them all alone, the Devourer response, came 18 hours later, transmitted on ancient frequencies that hadn't been used for 3 millennia. The message was simple. We wish to speak with the ones called humans. The meeting took place in neutral space, at the edge of the galactic disk where the last battle against the Devourers had been fought centuries ago. The area was still scarred with the debris of dead civilizations, entire worlds cracked open and left to drift as monuments to the galaxy's darkest hour. Admiral Sarah Park commanded the human delegation from the bridge of the UES Determination, humanity's newest and most powerful dreadnought. Beside her sat Ambassador Chun, while around them stood representatives from every major galactic civilization. They had insisted on being present for this historic first contact between humanity and the species that had once nearly ended all life in the galaxy. The Devourer ship was magnificent and terrible. Kilometers long, its biomechanical surface pulsed with veins of dark energy that hurt to look at directly. It had been grown rather than built, shaped by technologies that predated most current civilizations. Incoming transmission, reported Lieutenant Commander Walsh from the communication station. They're requesting a direct neural link with Ambassador Chun. Every alien representative recoiled in horror. Neural linking with Devourers was suicide. Their consciousness was so alien, so fundamentally hostile to organized thought, that even brief contact drove most beings permanently insane. Absolutely not, declared Prime Speaker Veltar. No being has ever survived direct mental contact with a Devourer. Marcus was already moving toward the neural interface chamber. Then, I guess we'll find out what makes humans different. Admiral Park grabbed his arm. Sir, this is insane. We don't know what kind of mental defenses you might need. Marcus smiled, and once again, every alien in the room felt that familiar chill. Admiral, do you know what humans call it when we deliberately enter mental contact with something that wants to destroy us? What, sir? Tuesday. The neural link established instantly, dropping Marcus into a mental landscape unlike anything he had ever experienced. The Devourer consciousness was vast, ancient, and utterly alien. It existed in dimensions of thought that human minds shouldn't have been able to comprehend. And yet Marcus felt strangely at home. The Devourer entity that touched his mind carried the memories of eons. It had seen galaxies born and die, had watched civilizations rise to unimaginable heights before falling to entropy or their own hubris. It was old when the first stars lit up the cosmos, and it would exist long after the last black holes evaporated. You are different, the entity observed, its thoughts carrying harmonics of genuine surprise. We expected to find a usual chaos of mortal consciousness. Instead, we find structure, purpose, discipline. Marcus formed his response carefully, aware that he was speaking not just for himself, but for his entire species. We've had practice controlling dangerous impulses. Indeed, the entity's attention focused more intensely. We have observed your kind since your emergence into the galaxy. You puzzle us. Your nature screams for conquest, for domination, for the subjugation of all lesser beings. Yet you choose cooperation. We've learned that getting what we want and wanting what we get are different things, Marcus replied. We want to survive and thrive. Conquest is just one path toward that goal, usually the least efficient one. The Devourer's amusement was like the sound of stars dying. And yet you build an armada that could challenge our fleet. You prepared for war while preaching peace. We prepared for war because we preach peace. Marcus corrected. Peace without the ability to enforce, it isn't peace. It's just wishful thinking. For a long moment, the ancient entity was silent, processing this concept. When it spoke again, its mental voice carried something that might have been respect. Your species built weapons capable of destroying us, it said. We have seen the theoretical specifications your military developed. Planet killers that make our bioships look primitive. Starcrackers that could turn entire systems into expanding clouds of plasma. Marcus nodded mentally. We also built the restraint not to use them. That, the Devourer said, is what makes you fascinating. The mental landscape around them shifted, showing images from across the galaxy. Civilizations rising, falling, being consumed by their own success or their own failures. The Devourers moving through it all like forces of nature, recycling the energy of failed societies back into the cosmic web. Do you understand what we are? The entity asked. Marcus considered the question carefully. You're gardeners. The concept struck the Devourer consciousness like a physical blow. In all their eons of existence, no mortal species had ever understood their true purpose. Explain, it demanded. You don't attack civilizations because you're evil or hungry or destructive, Marcus said. You attack them because they've reached a point where they're going to destroy themselves anyway. You're trying to salvage what you can before it's all lost to entropy. And yet you built a fleet to stop us. Marcus's mental smile was sharp as a blade. We built a fleet to give you a choice. You can take what's already dying, or you could try to take what's very much alive and see how much it costs you. The entity pondered this. You would fight us knowing you might lose. We would fight you knowing we'd win. Marcus replied with absolute certainty. The question is whether you think the galaxy is worth the price you'd have to pay to take it. Around them, the mental landscape shifted again, showing Marcus images that took his breath away. The Devourer's true history, their real purpose, the cosmic cycles they maintained. They weren't destroyers. They were the universe's way of cleaning up its failures and making sure resources didn't go to waste. Your species is not failing, the entity observed. Neither are your allies. The galaxy has found balance under your protection. Then, you have no reason to be here, Marcus said simply. No, the entity agreed. We do not. The neural link began to fade, but not before the Devourer entity shared one final thought. We will not return to this galaxy while your species maintains its current path. But be warned, human. Should you fall to your nature, should you become the conquerors your instincts demand, we will return. And on that day, no fleet will be sufficient to stop us. Marcus felt the connection sever, leaving him alone in his own mind once again. He opened his eyes to find every being on the bridge staring at him in amazement. The neural link lasted 47 minutes, Admiral Park said in hushed tones. The previous record was 12 seconds. What do they want? Asked Prime Speaker Veltar. Marcus stood slowly, still processing what he had experienced. They wanted to know if we were ready to take responsibility for the galaxy. And Marcus looked out at the stars, where the Devourer fleet was already beginning its retreat toward the cosmic void. They've decided we are. High Admiral Gorthack's quantum projection flickered as he processed this information. You mean they're leaving? Just like that. They're leaving because of what we are, Marcus said. And they'll come back if we ever forget what we chose to become. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't just joined galactic civilization. They had become its guardians, its protectors, its final line of defense against forces that existed beyond the normal universe. And somewhere in the void between galaxies, ancient entities older than time itself were watching, waiting to see if the species called human could maintain their chosen path, or if they would eventually need pruning like all the rest. 5 years had passed since the Devourers departed, and the galaxy had settled into an unprecedented era of prosperity. Trade flowed freely between systems. Conflicts were resolved through diplomacy rather than warfare, and scientific advancement accelerated as species shared knowledge without fear of it being weaponized against them. At the heart of it all was humanity, serving as both protector and mediator. Human ships patrolled the spaces between civilizations, human diplomats negotiated peaceful solutions to disputes, and human scientists worked alongside alien researchers to push the boundaries of knowledge. But in the deep archives of the Galactic Council, a very different story was being recorded. Keeper Zarthul stood before the archive of all things most secure vault, reviewing data that only he and a handful of others were permitted to see. The records painted a picture that would have terrified the galaxy's citizens if they had known. In the 5 years since joining the galactic community, humanity had not slowed their military expansion. They had accelerated it beyond all reason. The official records showed humanity operating a modest fleet of 10,000 vessels, an impressive but reasonable force for a species responsible for galactic security. The classified records told a different story. Humanity's actual military consisted of over 2 million ships, spread across hidden bases throughout the galaxy and beyond. They had colonized not 12 systems, as publicly stated, but over 800. Every asteroid belt, every gas giant, every marginally habitable world within 500 light-years of Earth had been turned into either a supply depot, a manufacturing center, or a military installation. More concerning were the weapons. Human military research had continued at a frantic pace, developing technologies that made their original planet crackers look like children's toys. Dimensional bombs that could erase entire star systems from reality. Temporal weapons that could unwrite species from the timeline itself. Quantum viruses that could convert matter at the subatomic level. They had built weapons capable of destroying the galaxy itself. And they had never used any of them. The psychological profile remains consistent. Keeper Zarthul murmured to himself as he reviewed the latest reports. Paranoid preparation paired with absolute restraint. The door to the vault opened, admitting Ambassador Chun. Over the years, Marcus had aged gracefully, though his eyes carried a weight that hadn't been there when he first addressed the council. He moved with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly how dangerous he was. "Keeper," Marcus said with a slight nod. "I assume you wanted to discuss the Andromedans." Zarthul wasn't surprised that Marcus knew about the approaching extragalactic fleet. Human sensor networks extended far beyond anything the other species possessed. They probably knew about threats long before anyone else did. "They'll arrive within the year," Zarthul confirmed. "Our analysis suggests they're refugees, fleeing something that destroyed their home galaxy." Marcus studied the holographic display showing long-range sensor data. Millions of ships fleeing across the void, carrying the survivors of an entire galaxy. How many? Approximately 4 billion beings across 37 species. They're requesting asylum and offering to share their scientific knowledge in exchange for sanctuary. Marcus nodded slowly. And the Council's decision? Unanimous approval for asylum. The sanctuary worlds are already being prepared to accommodate them. Zarthul paused. However, there are concerns about the entity that destroyed their galaxy. Marcus waited patiently for the Keeper to continue. "They call it the Silence," Zarthul said. "An intelligence that doesn't just destroy civilizations, but erases them, removes all trace that they ever existed. The Andromedans only escaped because they fled before it noticed them. And you're worried it might follow them here. The possibility has been considered." Zarthul gestured to another display, showing tactical projections. "Our combined fleets might be sufficient to mount a defense, but the Andromedans describe capabilities that exceed anything in our experience." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, studying the data. When he spoke, his voice carried the same calm certainty it had 5 years ago. "Keeper, do you know what the most dangerous thing in this galaxy is?" Zarthul considered the question. "Based on our analysis, it would be humanity's classified weapons programs." Marcus shook his head. "The most dangerous thing in this galaxy is a human being who has run out of patience." The temperature in the vault seemed to drop several degrees. For 5 years, we played the role you needed us to play, Marcus continued. Protectors, mediators, the reasonable voice that keeps everyone talking instead of shooting. We've honored every treaty, respected every boundary, shared our knowledge freely. He turned to face the keeper directly. But that was all predicated on one assumption, which was that the galaxy would remain safe for the people we've chosen to protect. Zarthal felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. Ambassador, surely you're not suggesting. I'm not suggesting anything, Marcus said calmly. I'm telling you that if this silence entity threatens our adopted family, humanity will stop pretending to be civilized. The Keeper's ancient mind struggled to process the implications. You would abandon the peace accord? We would fulfill it, Marcus corrected, to the letter. We swore to protect the peace and prosperity of this galaxy. If something from outside threatens that, we'll do whatever is necessary to eliminate the threat. Marcus activated his personal communicator. Admiral Park, Initiate Protocol Omega. Full deployment authorization. Sir, Admiral Park's voice came through immediately. Protocol Omega will reveal our complete military capability to the galaxy. Are you certain? The galaxy is about to face an existential threat, Marcus replied. It's time they knew what they have in their corner. New displays began materializing throughout the vault, showing the true scope of human military preparation. Weapons that existed in dimensions the other species couldn't even perceive. Ships built using technologies that shouldn't have been possible with current scientific understanding. Defensive installations that could withstand the heat death of the universe. Ow, whispered Zarthal. How did you advance so far beyond the rest of us? Marcus smiled, and the Keeper finally understood why that expression made other beings instinctively afraid. Because, Marcus said, we've been preparing for this fight since before we knew it was coming. Human nature assumes that everything will eventually try to kill us, so we prepare for everything, including things that haven't happened yet. The displays showed human ships already moving into position throughout the galaxy, taking up defensive formations around every inhabited world. More were emerging from hidden bases in deep space, their numbers growing by the hour. If this silence entity comes here, Marcus said, it will find a galaxy protected by a species that has been planning for exactly this type of encounter since we first looked up at the stars. He paused, and it will discover that there are worse things than cosmic intelligences that erase civilizations from existence. What could be worse than that? Zarthal asked. Marcus looked directly at the ancient historian, his eyes reflecting a coldness that reached to the bottom of space itself. A species that remembers everything, forgives nothing, and has spent 5 years preparing to fight gods. Outside the vault, across the galaxy, human ships continued to decloak. Their numbers climbed past 10 million, then 20 million, then 50 million vessels. Each one was armed with weapons that could reshape reality itself. And, in the void between galaxies, something ancient and terrible felt the first stirrings of an emotion it hadn't experienced in eons. Fear. The galaxy's newest protectors were ready for war. And they had learned their lessons well from the species that had tried to destroy what they loved. They would not make the mistake of showing mercy to existential threats. The age of human peace was about to become something far more terrible and far more necessary. The age of human wrath, the Galactic Council chambers, had never seen such silence. Representatives from 47 species sat in their crystalline pods, their various forms of breathing creating a symphony of worry that echoed through the vast dome. At the center of it all stood Ambassador Marcus Chun, his simple black suit looking almost primitive compared to the elaborate biomechanical forms around him. The Human Requests audience, announced Zephyrian Prime Speaker Veltar, her 6 arms gesturing in what Marcus had learned meant deep concern. Though we must admit, we are puzzled by your presence here. Marcus smiled, the expression causing several alien representatives to shift uncomfortably. Humans were still new to galactic politics, having only achieved faster-than-light travel 3 years ago. Most species took centuries to develop such technology. The fact that humans had done it in mere decades after their first radio transmission had set the entire galaxy talking. "I come bearing a simple message," Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. "Earth formally requests to join the Galactic Peace Accord." A sound like breaking glass filled the chamber. The crystalline hegemony representative was laughing, or what passed for laughter among silicon-based life forms. "Peace," the being chimed. "Your species has been at war with itself for your entire recorded history. You have weapons that could destroy your own world multiple times over." Marcus nodded calmly. "That's exactly why we want peace." The Void Swimmer's representative, a creature that existed partially in normal space and partially in dark matter, materialized more fully. "Your military broadcasts leak into our sensors, human. We see your war games, your weapon tests. Even now, your species builds machines designed for nothing but killing. And yet," Marcus said, pulling out a simple data pad, "our crime rates have dropped 90% since we learned we weren't alone. Our wars have stopped. Every human government has united under a single banner for the first time in our history." He looked around the chamber. "We want to join you because we've seen what unity can accomplish." The Hive Queen of the ZZ Kree Collective spoke through a 1,000-strong chorus of voices. "Unity born from fear is not true peace, human. What happens when that fear fades? What happens when your species grows comfortable with galactic civilization?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight that seemed to press against the very walls of the chamber. "With respect, Your Majesty, you assume our desire for peace comes from fear of you." He gestured to the assembled aliens. "It doesn't." The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. Senator Crixtal of the Martial Brotherhood, a species known for their warrior culture, leaned forward in his pod. "Explain yourself, human." "We've studied your histories," Marcus said simply. "All of them. The Great War of the Triple Suns that lasted 800 years. The purge of the Crystal Nebula where entire worlds were turned to glass. The endless hunger that consumed 47 solar systems before the machine gods could be stopped." He paused, looking directly at each representative. "We've seen what happens when advanced civilizations go to war." The chamber fell silent again, but this time it was different. This wasn't the silence of confusion or curiosity. This was the silence of recognition. "We don't want peace because we're afraid of you," Marcus continued. "We want peace because we're afraid of ourselves. Because we know what we are, and we know what we're capable of becoming." The Ethereal Collective's representative, a being of pure energy barely contained within a force field, pulsed with colors that the translation system interpreted as deep unease. "Your species is young, human. You speak of things you cannot possibly understand." Marcus smiled again, and this time several representatives actually recoiled. It wasn't a cruel smile or a threatening one. It was sad, infinitely sad. 3 years ago, when your scout ships first made contact with us, do you know what our immediate response was? Marcus asked. Within 6 hours, every major power on Earth had activated their most advanced military programs. Within 12 hours, we had theoretical weapons capable of destroying not just your scout ships, but the planets they came from. The silence stretched on. Within 24 hours, Marcus continued, we had plans for hunting down and exterminating every single one of your species. He looked around the chamber one more time. Not because you had threatened us, not because you had shown any hostile intent, but because you existed and we hadn't known about you before. He set his data pad on the speaking platform. We stopped those programs. We chose peace instead. But the fact that our first instinct was to plan your complete annihilation. Marcus shook his head. That's why we want to join the peace accord. Because we recognize what we are, and we want to be something better. The chamber remained silent for a very long time.